I sat in my car, staring at the glowing screen of my phone as my mother's text message blurred through my tears. Change of plans, sweetie. We have to cancel the venue for Saturday. Your sister needs the money for her new apartment deposit. We can just do cupcakes at the house next month. The funeral flowers for my self-respect were officially fresh. It was 5 days before my golden birthday, the one milestone I was promised would finally be mine. For 25 years, I had taken a back seat, playing the understanding daughter, while my sister took center stage. Everyone thought I'd just nod, cry in private, and show up to eat a stale cupcake. But as I started the engine, a strange, cold clarity washed over me. I wasn't going to cry anymore. They thought they were just canceling a party. They didn't know they were canceling me. My name's Chloe, and I recently turned 26 years old. If you looked at my family from the outside, you would think we were perfectly normal. But inside our house, I was the invisible daughter. For as long as I can remember, I played the role of the perfect, low-maintenance child. I got good grades, never stayed out late, and never asked for much. My sister, Vanessa, was the exact opposite. She was a whirlwind of drama, expensive tastes, and constant emergencies. If Vanessa crashed her car, the family budget was rewritten. If Vanessa wanted to try a new hobby, my extracurricular activities were quietly cut to pay for it. I learned to suppress my own needs, telling myself that being the responsible one would eventually earn my mother's genuine attention. The year I turned 26 was supposed to be different. In our family, 26 was considered the golden year, a tradition my mother started where she promised to throw a beautiful, formal celebration to mark the official transition into true adulthood. Vanessa had received a lavish party at a downtown venue for her 26th birthday, complete with a professional photographer and a designer dress. When it was finally my turn, my mother sat me down at the kitchen table, took my hands, and looked into my eyes. She promised me that this year, the spotlight would finally be on me. We spent months planning the venue, looking at catering menus, and sending out invitations to my closest friends and colleagues. For the first time in my life, I allowed myself to feel important. I truly believed that my days of being secondary to Vanessa were over, and that my patience had finally paid off. I counted down the days to Saturday, completely unaware of how quickly that promise would vanish. The text arrived on a Tuesday afternoon while I was at my desk, quietly reviewing the final seating chart for Saturday. It took a moment for the words to actually process. Change of plans, sweetie. We have to cancel the venue for Saturday. Your sister needs the money for her new apartment deposit. We can just do cupcakes at the house next month. My hands trembled so violently, I nearly dropped my phone. Without thinking, I left work early and drove straight to my mother's house, my heart hammering against my ribs. When I walked through the front door, the atmosphere wasn't tense or apologetic. It was entirely casual. My mother was sitting on the living room sofa, helping Vanessa scroll through interior design feeds on her tablet. They looked up, and the immediate shift in their expressions told me everything I needed to know. Chloe, look, I know you're upset, my mother began, her voice dripping with that synthetic, plastic sympathy she always used when she was about to demand a sacrifice from me. But Vanessa found the perfect place in Granite Bay. The landlord needed the deposit immediately, or she would have lost it. Family has to support each other when it counts. Vanessa didn't even look up from her screen, merely offering a passive-aggressive shrug. It's just a birthday, Chloe. You turned 26 anyway. It's not like a wedding. Don't be so dramatic. I stood in the doorway, watching the two of them alienate me from my own life with total indifference. There was no offer to reschedule the venue, no apology for the months of planning thrown into the trash, and no recognition of the promise that had just been broken. They expected me to nod, smile, and absorb the blow like I always did, completely blind to the fact that something inside me had just permanently broken. I didn't yell and I didn't cry. I simply turned around, walked out of the living room, and went upstairs to my bedroom. The silence inside me felt heavy, a sudden and absolute realization that I would never win a game where the rules were constantly rigged against me. I pulled my old duffel bags from the closet and began packing. I folded my clothes methodically, clearing out my closet and shelves with a strange, calm efficiency. I was leaving this house, and I was leaving it for good. As I emptied the bottom drawer of my old wooden desk, my hand brushed against a faded manila envelope trapped behind the runner. It was labeled with my name in my late grandfather's elegant handwriting. Curious, I opened it and pulled out a stack of old financial statements and a certified trust document. As my eyes scanned the legal text, a cold wave of shock washed over me. The documents revealed that when my grandfather passed away 5 years ago, he hadn't left his modest savings to my mother to distribute as she saw fit. He had created a specific, legally protected educational and milestone fund explicitly for me, totaling $40,000. My mother had been named the temporary custodian until my 26th birthday. I looked closer at the transaction ledger attached to the back. Over the last 3 years, there were multiple massive withdrawals, each corresponding exactly to Vanessa's major financial crises: her ruined car, her failed business venture, and now, her luxury apartment deposit. My mother hadn't been canceling my birthday party to save the family from a sudden emergency. She had been systematically stealing my rightful inheritance to fund my sister's reckless lifestyle. They thought I was just the quiet, compliant daughter who would never look beneath the surface. They had no idea I now held proof of their betrayal. I waited until Friday evening to make my move. Vanessa had dragged my mother out to a lavish celebratory dinner to toast to her new apartment, a dinner paid for, no doubt, with the remnants of my stolen inheritance. The house was completely dark and blissfully quiet when I hauled my bags down the stairs. Walking through the hallways of my childhood home, I didn't feel the crushing grief I expected. Instead, I felt an empowering rush of freedom. I loaded the last of my boxes into the trunk of my car, ensuring I left nothing behind that could give them an excuse to contact me. Before I locked the front door for the final time, I walked into the kitchen and placed a photocopy of the grandfather's trust ledger directly on the counter, right next to the designer housewarming card Vanessa had left out. Earlier that morning, I had visited the bank with the original trust documents. Because I was officially turning 26 in a matter of days, the bank manager confirmed that my mother's custodial access was legally terminating, allowing me to immediately freeze the remaining funds and transfer them into a private account she couldn't touch. I had also secured a charming, furnished studio apartment closer to my office, signing the lease using my own hard-earned savings. As I sat in the driver's seat and turned the ignition, I looked back at the dark windows of the house. For 26 years, I had allowed them to define my worth based on how much I was willing to sacrifice for Vanessa. By stealing my grandfather's gift, they had taken away my past, but they no longer had any power over my future. I pulled out of the driveway into the night, cutting the invisible strings of emotional dependency without leaving a single text, call, or explanation. The morning of my 26th birthday arrived with a beautiful, uninterrupted silence. I woke up in my new studio apartment, made coffee, and watched the sunrise without a single ounce of dread. But by noon, the inevitable storm finally hit. My phone began to vibrate violently on the counter, lighting up with a barrage of frantic missed calls and increasingly angry text messages from my mother and Vanessa. They had obviously returned home, found my empty room, and discovered the financial ledger I had left on the kitchen counter. When my mother called for the 5th consecutive time, I finally decided to answer. I pressed the phone to my ear, remaining completely silent as her frantic, high-pitched voice immediately echoed through the receiver. "Chloe, where on earth are you?" she demanded, her voice a mix of manufactured panic and intense fury. "We went to your room, and everything is gone. And what is this ridiculous paperwork on the kitchen counter? You have completely ruined your sister's housewarming day. You need to get back here right now and explain yourself." I took a slow, deep breath, feeling absolutely no fear. "I am not coming back, Mom," I said, my voice incredibly calm and steady. "I know everything. I know about the $40,000 grandfather left specifically for me, and I know you spent the last 3 years stealing it to fund Vanessa's life." The line went dead silent for a few seconds before she tried to stammer out a defensive excuse, claiming it was a family loan. "It wasn't a loan, it was theft," I interrupted firmly. "I froze the account this morning. The remaining money is safe, and I am gone for good. Happy birthday to me." I hung up before she could reply, blocking both of their numbers instantly. 3 months passed, and the silence from my old life became the foundation for my new one. Living in my studio apartment, I finally learned what it felt like to exist without walking on eggshells. I decorated the space with things I actually liked, cooked meals without accommodating anyone else's demands, and invested my energy into my career. Without the constant emotional drain of my family's manufactured crises, I excelled at work and even received a promotion. I finally felt visible, not because of someone else's fleeting validation, but because I was actively building a life I was proud of. The remaining money from my grandfather's trust stayed safely in my private account, acting as a financial cushion that gave me a profound sense of security I had never known before. Through mutual family friends, fragments of news about my mother and Vanessa eventually reached me. Without my indirect financial backing and the remainder of the trust money my mother had planned to exploit, Vanessa's luxury apartment scheme quickly fell apart. She couldn't afford the steep monthly rent on her own and was forced to break her lease, losing her hefty deposit in the process. With nowhere else to go, she moved right back into my mother's house, bringing her signature drama and financial strain back with her. My mother was now left entirely alone to deal with the exhausting consequences of her own favoritism, realizing too late that the daughter she had constantly exploited was the only one keeping the household stable. They tried reaching out through distant relatives, sending messages begging me to come home and help mend the family, but I politely declined. I had finally realized that boundaries weren't selfish. They were necessary. My past was gone, but the horizon ahead of me was entirely mine. Looking back, leaving that house was the hardest but best decision I've ever made. It taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about who actually respects you. If you are constantly sacrificing your own happiness to keep the peace in a toxic dynamic, please remember that your peace matters too. It is never too late to walk away, establish strong boundaries, and start over on your own terms. Now, I want to hear from all of you who followed my journey until the end. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Have you ever had to walk away from a family member to protect your own mental health? Let me know your thoughts and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. Thank you so much for watching, and stay strong out there.